Jayden Hall moved through the halls of Crestlake High on crutches, 6 months into recovery from the injury that stole his future on the court. As the new black kid at a polished white prep school, he expected silence, but not the whispers, not the laughter, not the daily humiliation, until three students cornered him behind the parking lot, snatched his crutches, and left him on the pavement, filming it like it was a joke. What they didn't know was that Jayden had been training in silence, every night, on one leg, with nothing but pain and purpose. They thought they took his ability to fight, but all they really did was take away the brakes. He didn't come to Crestlake High to prove anything. Jayden Hall just wanted to finish the year, keep his head down, and maybe, quietly, learn how to walk without pain again. He arrived 3 weeks into the semester. Nobody cared why. The front office sent him to class with a printout and a side glance. The hallways were wide, polished, echoing. His crutches tapped louder than he wanted. Every step called attention. Most students stared. Some whispered. A few chuckled. One guy passed and muttered, "Should have brought wheels, man." Another mimicked a limp behind his back. Nobody stopped them. The teachers didn't look up. At lunch, he sat alone at the corner table by the vending machines. The seat beside him stayed empty until Wednesday. That's when she showed up. She didn't say hi. She didn't ask if the seat was taken. She just sat down, opened a sketchbook, and put her earbuds in. Her name was Mia. Long braids, faded hoodie, eyes like she saw things twice. She didn't look at his leg. She didn't have to. The next day she was back, and the next. Jayden never asked why. They didn't talk much. Just nods, quiet glances, two people sharing silence that didn't feel awkward. On Friday, he dropped one of his books. Mia picked it up before he could bend down. Their hands touched for half a second. He muttered, "Thanks." She didn't say anything, just gave him a look that felt louder than words. Over the weekend, Jayden lay in bed and stared at the ceiling. He kept hearing their laughter in the hallways, the sound of his crutches on tile, and Mia's pencil scratching paper. Monday morning, he stepped into the building again. Same pain in his knee, same weight on his back, but something felt different. Not outside, inside. His mother had warned him about this place, not in words but in looks. That pause in her voice when she said, "Just keep to yourself, baby." The way she packed his lunch like it was armor. She worked nights at the clinic, came home when the sun was already up. Her hands always smelled like antiseptic. She smiled like it took effort. Jayden never asked how she was holding up. He could see it in the way she rubbed her forehead when she thought no one was watching. There was a photo on the fridge, him and his older brother, Isaiah, in matching basketball jerseys. Isaiah was all muscle and confidence. He'd gone into the Army right after high school. Jayden hadn't heard from him in weeks. Some nights, Jayden stood in front of that fridge just staring. Not hungry, just remembering what it felt like to be proud of himself. He didn't tell anyone this. Not his mother, not Mia, not even himself, really. But walking into Crestlake felt like starting from scratch, like proving you existed every day to people who decided you didn't. By the third week, people stopped calling him names. They didn't stop laughing. They just got quieter about it. Their looks said more than their words ever did. In the locker room, Blake threw a towel too hard. It hit Jayden's shoulder. "Oops," he smirked. Ryan laughed. Nobody else did. Jayden just bent down and laced up his shoes like nothing happened. One afternoon during PE, someone moved his crutches while he was tying his shoe. When he looked up, they were across the gym, propped against the far wall. Nobody admitted it. Everyone saw it. Jayden didn't ask for help. He pulled himself forward on the floor, one elbow after the other. The room went quiet except for his movement. The coach turned away. The students watched without a word. That night, he stood shirtless in front of the bathroom mirror. His knee throbbed, his shoulder bruised. He stared at his reflection like it belonged to someone else, someone he hadn't met yet. The next day, he started doing push-ups against the wall, quiet ones, between classes, in the garage when no one was home. Not for revenge, not yet, just to stop feeling like paper. He didn't tell Mia, but she noticed. She always did. At lunch, she slid a notebook across the table. Inside, a sketch. Him standing, no crutches, a tall shadow behind him. No caption, No signature. Just that. Jayden closed the book slowly. He didn't say anything. Didn't have to. Later that evening, he went out to the backyard and tried to walk the length of the fence without his crutches. He made it halfway before stumbling. He didn't curse, didn't yell, just sat there in the grass and stared at the sky, catching his breath until the stars started to blink through. Whatever this was, it wasn't just about pain anymore. It wasn't just about him either. It was about what came next, and who he'd have to become to face it. The gym was nearly empty when he stayed late that Thursday. Jayden waited until the lights dimmed, until the last echoes of sneakers faded out. He moved to the far end of the bleachers and sat on the floor. His knee was tight, hands unsteady. The cold from the hardwood seeped through his back. He had brought an old dumbbell from home. Scratched paint, rusted edge, heavier than it looked. Not for reps, just to hold while trying to stand. The idea felt stupid at first. He pressed it to his chest and pushed with everything he had. Failed, sat back, tried again, collapsed, again, fell to the side. The sound of metal thudding against the ground echoed across the empty space. His breath came short. Sweat trickled down his face. The ache in his knee flared, but he didn't stop. Not until he stood. When he finally made it up, his legs trembled like wires about to snap. It wasn't pride he felt, more like disbelief. But he was upright. That had to count for something. Behind him, one soft clap broke the silence. That night at home, Jayden didn't use the crutches. Not for the hallway, not for the kitchen, not even when it burned. He didn't tell his mom, didn't say anything at all. But she watched him walk from the sink to his room, and something in her expression shifted, like she was afraid to hope too soon. Jayden lay in bed and stared at the ceiling until the house was quiet, then whispered to no one, "I'm not done." Saturday morning came with silence. No alarms, no footsteps, just the sound of wind pushing against the windows. Jayden sat at the kitchen table, toast untouched. The house smelled like burnt coffee and old floor polish. His mom had left for her shift before sunrise. A note on the fridge in her usual handwriting. "Be safe. Proud of you." He read it twice, then folded it and put it in his pocket. He didn't know why. In the living room, the TV was on low, a news anchor talking about overseas deployments. Jayden didn't look. He just stared at the photos on the shelf. There was one of Isaiah, his older brother, in uniform, broad shoulders, impossible smile. Jayden remembered being 9 and trying to wear his brother's boots. They reached his thighs. They hadn't spoken in weeks. Isaiah's last message was short. "Keep going, even when it sucks." That was it. Jayden walked to the hallway and opened the closet. His crutches leaned in the corner, resting like tired bones. He stared at them, not with anger, not even with shame, just with the weight of everything they'd meant. He took them out, held them for a moment, then slid them gently under his bed. Not hidden, just not needed right now. Later that night, his mom came home. Jayden stood when she entered, not quickly, not cleanly, but fully. She froze for a moment, bag still in hand, then stepped forward and touched his arm. "You okay?" she asked softly. He nodded. "Yeah." It was the first time he said it like he believed it. Monday started with a locker that wouldn't open, not jammed, just wrong. Jayden stared at it for a few seconds before realizing it wasn't his. Someone had swapped the name tags. His combination didn't work. His books were gone. Down the hall, Blake and Ryan laughed too loudly at something on a phone screen. Jayden didn't need to see it. He knew. He reported it to the office. The secretary smiled without smiling, scribbled a note and said someone would look into it. No one did. Second period, someone dropped a paper on his desk. Folded, no name. Inside was a drawing, a stick figure on crutches, surrounded by fire. The word tragic scrawled above it. Jayden didn't react. He folded it again and put it in his bag. In the weight room, he kept to himself. Resistance bands, slow lifts, core balance work. The school physical therapist allowed him limited access, mostly because he never asked for help. After class, he stayed behind and tried a few assisted squats. Not perfect, not smooth, but progress. The mirror didn't lie. He was stronger. even if no one cared. Back in the hallway, Mia caught up to him. She didn't smile, just handed him a flyer for the school's end-of-year student showcase. I submitted something, she said quietly. You should too. He looked at the flyer. Article music, spoken word, film. I don't do performances. It's not about the crowd, she said. It's about being seen. He didn't respond, just kept walking. Lunch was loud. Jayden sat with Mia at their usual table near the back. Ryan walked past and accidentally bumped his crutch. It spun out and clattered to the floor. Jayden didn't flinch, didn't give them the show. But later that day, in an empty stairwell, he practiced punches against the wall. Not to hurt anything, just to feel what it was like. When his knuckles split, he didn't stop right away. At home, his mom asked about the scrape. He said it happened in gym. She didn't press. That night, he opened a blank notebook and wrote one line at the top of the page. If they want to break me, they better hit harder. He kept writing. Not full pages, not journal entries, just sharp, ugly lines. Sentences that sounded like cuts. He flipped to a new page and wrote, they don't see a person, just a target. If I stop moving, they win. She deserves better than watching me crawl. Later that night, he heard his mom coughing in the other room. Soft, but tight. He stood in the hallway, unsure whether to check on her. Instead, he went back to his room, closed the door, and stared at the crutches leaning in the corner. He hadn't touched them since Friday. His knee still ached, but not as much as before. He opened his phone and hovered over his brother's contact. No new messages, just the last one. Keep going. Jayden typed something, then erased it. The next morning, the gym was half full. Students stretched, joked, got loud. Jayden worked in silence. He added weight to the bar, just 5 extra pounds, just enough to feel it. Blake saw it, didn't say anything, but his smirk said enough. On the mat, Jayden slipped during a lunge and fell forward, catching himself on both hands. A few laughs trickled out from the corner. He pushed himself up, slowly, face unreadable. Coach Lynn walked over. You good? I'm fine. He wasn't. Not physically, not emotionally, but he was still upright. At lunch, Mia handed him her sketchbook. No words, just a page marked with sharp black lines, a crutch bending, cracking down the middle. In the background, 3 shadowy figures, too blurred to name. Jayden stared at it, then slid the book back. He didn't need to ask why she drew it. He already knew. That evening, he stood in front of the garage mirror, shirt off, bruises fading into yellow and green. He flexed his legs slowly, watching how the knee held up. Each day felt like a slow war. No one fired bullets, but the damage was real. It came in jokes, in silence, in being ignored. He looked at his reflection and thought of Isaiah. His brother had never been one for speeches, but he always showed up when it counted. Jayden wondered what he'd say now. Probably nothing. Maybe just a nod, the way soldiers do in those old war movies. He mimicked it in the mirror. A nod. Quiet, steady, solid. Back inside, his mother was at the sink washing dishes, her back curved forward with fatigue. She didn't hear him come in. You working too hard again? He asked. She jumped slightly, then smiled without turning. Always. He stepped beside her, leaned on the counter, said nothing for a while, then softly, You think I'm weak? She finally turned to face him. No, she said, but I think you believe it more than they ever could. Jayden didn't reply, but later he took the crutches and put them in the garage corner, out of sight. He wasn't ready to throw them away, but he also wasn't ready to lean on them either. Before bed, he looked at the notebook again, the page where he wrote, If they want to break me, he added underneath, they better come prepared. That night, Jayden couldn't sleep. He lay on his side, eyes open, listening to the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the hallway clock. Outside, the wind had picked up. Branches tapped against the windows like questions with no answers. He sat up, reached under his bed, and pulled out the notebook again. This time, he didn't write threats. He wrote plans, training goals, representatives, dates, a rough timeline, something real. If they wanted to keep him on the ground, they'd have to catch him there first. The next day in class, Mr. Burnett handed back graded essays. Jayden's paper had a red mark at the top. Technically sound, but where's your voice? Jayden stared at the comment longer than he should have. It echoed what Mia had said days earlier. Maybe it was easier not to have one. During group discussion, no one picked him for their cluster. He stayed at his desk, scribbling circles in the margins of his notebook, pretending not to care. After class, Mr. Burnett stopped him at the door. "You've got more to say than you think," he said, eyes soft but firm. Jayden didn't answer. He just nodded and left. That afternoon, he practiced walking from one end of the gym to the other without crutches. One hand on the wall, ankles tight, breath shallow. Each step felt like a question. Each pause, a dare. When his leg gave out halfway, he caught himself on a bench, sat there for 5 minutes, staring at the floor, letting the ache settle. Back home, he found his mother folding laundry. She didn't speak until he placed the crutches down beside the couch. "Your shoulders are getting stronger," she said. Not a compliment, just observation. He nodded, then asked, "What if I get stronger but still lose?" She looked at him. "Then at least you didn't lose soft." Jayden sat with that for a while. It didn't solve anything, but it didn't feel like failure either. Later in his notebook, he wrote, "You don't win by avoiding pain. You win by refusing to stay down." He closed it slowly, then set his alarm an hour earlier for the next morning. The classroom was too quiet. Jayden sat near the window, not by choice. It just happened to be the seat no one else wanted. Mr. Burnett scribbled something on the board. U.S. history, civil rights, movements, resistance. Behind Jayden, Blake whispered to someone. A hiss, a laugh. Then a crumpled note hit the back of Jayden's hoodie. He didn't turn, didn't read it. Mr. Burnett turned around, eyes scanning the room. His gaze paused, just for a second, on Jayden, then moved on. Jayden clenched his jaw. The chalk in Mr. Burnett's hand broke. No one laughed. When the bell rang, everyone shuffled out like nothing had happened. Jayden stayed behind. Not because he wanted to talk, because his leg needed time. Mr. Burnett erased the board slowly. The squeak of the eraser filled the silence. Jayden stood, adjusted his bag. "You doing okay, Hall?" the teacher asked without looking at him. Jayden didn't answer right away, just adjusted the strap on his shoulder. "Fine," he said. It didn't sound true. Mr. Burnett finally looked up. "I know school's not always smooth." Jayden waited, hoped for something more. An offer, a question, a name. None came. He left the room slower than usual, half hoping Burnett would stop him. Say something real. Nothing. At lunch, the table he used to sit at was full. Not with friends, just full. He took his food outside, sat by the gym wall. Concrete cold against his back. Across the yard, Mia was painting on her sneakers again. She didn't look up, but she probably knew he was there. Jayden opened his notebook, skipped the drills, wrote one sentence in the back corner of the page. They see it. They all see it. But silence is safer. He stared at the words for a long time, then flipped to a blank page and drew the outline of a chair. Empty, facing the chalkboard, facing away from him. After lunch in the hallway, Jayden moved through waves of students like a rock in a stream. People parted without looking directly at him. Some glanced, then quickly found something else to focus on. A locker, a poster, their phone. He wasn't invisible. He was just treated like a shadow, seen but ignored. Someone behind him whispered his name, then laughed. Another phone screen tilted just enough to show his face on it. Paused mid-step. He stopped walking, turned around. The hallway froze, but he didn't say anything, didn't even glare. He just looked, and it was worse than yelling. The students behind him looked away, embarrassed, like they'd been caught stealing something they didn't even want. Jayden turned and kept walking. At home, the house smelled like laundry and old lemon cleaner. His mom was folding clothes at the table, humming something tuneless. She paused when he entered. Looked like she might ask something, but didn't. Jayden dropped his backpack by the door, went straight to his room. He sat at his desk, turned his notebook to a new page, and stared at it. Words weren't coming. Just wait. He didn't want to scream, didn't want to hit anything. He just didn't want to be silent. So he picked up his pen and started writing whatever came. I am not a target. I am not a ghost. I am not your quiet story. The pen scratched hard into the paper, letters pressed through to the next page, and for the first time that week, he felt lighter when he closed the cover. Chapter 6. Pressure Points. Jayden stood. His foot shifted, and he slipped. Fell hard. Silence. No one came. He pulled himself up anyway. Not for them, not even for himself. Just because he could. At the end of the session, he limped past Coach Walker's office. The door was slightly open. Inside, he saw Walker looking at his phone. On the screen was the video, the one where Jayden crawled. Walker didn't hit play. He just closed the phone inside. That silence said more than any pep talk ever could. The mat was cold against his cheek. Jayden didn't know how long he'd been down there. The stretch had gone wrong. His knee gave out, and the rest of him followed. No one saw. That made it worse. He lay there staring at the dusty corner of the garage, breathing like each inhale was a negotiation. "This is where it ends," a voice whispered. Not out loud, but deep inside, the kind that never used words before. He closed his eyes, waited for anger, for tears, for anything. Nothing came, just the weight. Then slowly, hand by hand, he dragged himself upright, not fast, not proud, but up. That was enough. She found him sitting alone by the benches again. Same place, same posture. "You're not the only one who's hurting," she said. Jayden didn't look up. "You think I don't see you? That I don't care?" Still silence. "You don't talk. You don't fight. You just sit there, like silence is some kind of shield." He looked up, eyes flat. "What do you want me to say?" "Something. Anything." She took a breath. "I'm not just background, Jayden." He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "I didn't ask you to follow me." "No," she said, "but I stayed anyway." She walked off, didn't look back. In the lunchroom, Jayden picked a seat at the end of the table. A tray clattered nearby. Someone sat down, then paused. The boy looked at Jayden, then stood back up and moved to another table without saying a word. Jayden stared at the now empty space. Across the room, someone whispered something. Another giggle. A phone raised just enough to catch his outline. He wasn't being shouted at anymore. That was the worst part. He'd become scenery. Background noise no one wanted to stand next to. That day, he ate in 3 bites and left without throwing away the tray. Wednesday hit harder than expected, not with fists, with silence. It started in homeroom. Jayden walked in and everyone stopped talking. Not froze, just paused. The kind of pause that meant they'd been talking about him. He took his seat, eyes forward, mouth closed. The morning announcement crackled over the intercom, something about a spirit rally. Jayden didn't listen. He was already drifting. When the bell rang, someone had left a laminated hall pass on his desk. A sticker across the front read, "Permanent Visitor." He stared at it. No one moved. No one claimed it. He slid it into his bag and left. By third period, the hallways felt narrower. He limped a little harder that day, his knee stiff from the cold. Ryan brushed past him near the vending machines and whispered, "Should have stayed broken." "You were quieter then." Jayden didn't respond. He wanted to. His fingers curled around the strap of his bag, knuckles pale. But he kept walking. At lunch, he sat with Mia. Neither spoke. She was working on a new charcoal sketch, this one darker than the others. The paper smudged around the edges. He looked down at his tray, untouched. "You ever feel like they're just waiting?" he asked quietly. "For what?" she said, not looking up. "For me to snap." Mia didn't answer right away, just kept shading. Then, "They want the story. Don't give it to them." He nodded, even though he didn't feel it. That afternoon in gym, the coach had them pair off for stretches. Jayden ended up alone. Coach Lynn glanced over, but didn't say anything. Derek and Blake stood nearby, whispering, watching. On the way out of the locker room, someone stuck out a foot. Jayden tripped hard, landing on his hands and shoulder. He didn't fall all the way, but it was close. The hallway erupted in brief laughter. Jayden turned around slowly. Derek stood there, arms folded, eyes smug. Jayden stepped forward once. Just once. Long enough for the air to tighten. Then he turned and walked away. Back home, he didn't eat dinner. Didn't answer his mom when she knocked. He sat at the foot of his bed, staring at his hands. They trembled slightly, not from fear, from something older. Later that night, Mia texted him a photo, a silhouette of a figure standing in front of a wall with shadows looming behind. Underneath, one line, "You are not what they want you to become." He stared at it until his eyes burned. Then he stood, walked out to the garage and started training again. No music, no distractions. His breath echoed against the concrete. His body ached, but he didn't stop. Not that night. Not anymore. He lay awake for hours after training. The house was quiet except for the creaks of old wood and the distant hum of traffic. In the dark, he thought about his brother. Isaiah would have laughed at these kids, would have told Jayden to hit harder, move faster, never let them see the pain. But Jayden wasn't Isaiah. He wasn't a soldier, not yet. He closed his eyes and saw the gym floor again. Derek's smirk, the snickers, the way his hands had curled into fists without him even thinking. He imagined what it would feel like to let go. Just once. To give them what they wanted. A swing, a scream. Something loud enough to shut it all down. Then Mia's words echoed back. "Don't give it to them." He breathed in, held it, let it go. At school the next day, he kept his head up. The limp still there, but smaller. Not hidden, not exaggerated. Just real. A few students watched him longer than usual. Not mockingly, not kindly either. Just watching. In English class, the teacher asked about voice and writing, how characters show themselves without speaking directly. Jayden raised his hand. Slowly, his voice was even. "Sometimes it's in what they survive," he said. "Not what they say." The room went still for a second. Then the teacher nodded. "Exactly." That night he returned to the garage again. Rewrapped his hands. Faced the bag. Not to punish himself. Not to bleed. Just to remember who he was when no one was watching. Friday came colder than usual. Jayden wore 2 hoodies, hood up, hands deep in his pockets. In the courtyard, a group of students gathered around someone's phone. He didn't need to guess. Another video. Another meme. Maybe a slowed-down clip of him tripping. Maybe a fake ad calling him Crestlake's mascot again. He didn't look. Didn't flinch. But when he passed the art room, Mia stepped out and grabbed his sleeve. Quiet. Firm. She handed him a folded paper. Inside, a drawing of a burning match pressed between fingers that refused to let go. He didn't speak, but his eyes did. She nodded once and went back inside. That night, he finally opened Isaiah's last message again, reread it. Word by word, he started to write back. Didn't know what to say, so he typed what came first. "Still here." He hit send, then wrapped his hands, went to the garage, and started again. Later, lying in bed, Jayden stared at the cracks in the ceiling. He thought about what it meant to endure. Not win, not rise above, just endure. The school hadn't changed. The people hadn't changed. But something inside him had. He was still angry, still hurt, still healing. But for the first time, he wasn't waiting to be saved. He was building something. Quietly. Repetition after repetition. Word after word. Sketch after sketch. Whatever came next, he'd meet it standing. That night, after training, Jayden sat on the kitchen floor with his back against the fridge. His shirt stuck to him, soaked through, but he didn't care. He watched the timer on the microwave count down even though nothing was cooking. Just blinking time, measurable, cold. His mom walked in, saw him there, and for a second neither of them said anything. Then she reached into the cabinet, pulled down a jar of peanut butter, and handed him a spoon. He raised an eyebrow. "You need protein," she said, "and something normal." Jayden took the spoon. "Was I ever normal?" She sat down across from him. Thank God they ate in silence. Mother and son, 2 people trying to stay standing. Before bed, Jayden scrolled his old texts. Back when he still believed he'd go pro. Back when coaches called and friends asked for pickup games. He didn't cry, but his fingers shook as he read the texts from Isaiah. Memes, drills, voice notes from when he was deployed. The most recent message just said, "You're still my favorite fighter." Jayden locked the screen, laid back in bed, let the words stay without fighting them. When he closed his eyes, he saw the gym again. Empty, echoing, waiting. This time he wasn't scared of what came next. Every morning started the same. Slow roll from bed, pressure on his elbows, pull, breathe, balance. The carpet was worn where he trained. Tiny footprints of progress, if you looked close enough. He stopped using music during workouts. Needed to hear himself. The air in the garage always smelled like dust and rubber. Isaiah had trained here too. The punching bag still had a worn mark where his gloves hit again and again. Sometimes Jayden stood in front of it and just stared, breathing deep, not striking. Balance, breath, repeat. One night, Isaiah called during cooldown. The camera shook on his end, probably bunked up in some tent or field base. Jayden turned the phone screen face up on the bench while doing leg raises. "You're not pushing hard enough," Isaiah said. "You're not here," Jayden replied. Silence. Then both of them smiled. A tiny crack in the armor. "You walking yet?" Isaiah asked. Jayden sat up. More like surviving. "Then do it standing up." They didn't say much after that, but Jayden started holding his balance longer. Later that week, he collapsed halfway through a movement. Didn't curse, didn't cry. Just lay flat on the cold mat, breathing, counting each exhale like it mattered. His mom opened the door at some point, didn't ask anything. Just set a water bottle down nearby. "When you're ready," she said. "No one's rushing you." He nodded, stayed down a few more breaths. That night he wrote in his notebook, "Stillness is its own kind of power." The words felt solid. He underlined them twice. By the end of the week, he stood for 10 seconds on his left leg. No crutches. Then 12. Not much, but it was enough to call it progress. She looked at him from the doorway. "You training or hiding?" Jayden didn't answer, just met her eyes. She nodded once. "Good, then don't stop." She stood in the doorway for a long time before saying anything. "I raised you stronger than this," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Jayden didn't look up from the floor. "I'm not weak." "Then why do you keep looking down when you walk in here?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. "You don't talk to me. You barely eat. And I see how you come home. Like you're trying not to be noticed by your own door." Jayden finally looked at her. His eyes weren't angry, just tired. "You weren't there." That landed like a stone in the center of the room. She took a breath. "I'm here now." He didn't nod, but he didn't look away again either. In the locker room, the air was stale with sweat and silence. Jayden was halfway to the door when Ryan stepped in front of him. The others were behind, but Ryan was the only one who spoke. "You were fast," he said, holding a basketball under one arm. Jayden said nothing. "Before the accident, I mean. You made us look slow." Jayden's jaw clenched. "Still can." Ryan smirked, but there was no real joy in it, just defense. "No one likes reminders," Ryan said, "of what we almost became." Jayden stepped past him, slow but solid. He didn't need to win the argument. He'd already won something more important. It was 2 weeks until the student showcase. Mia's name was already printed on the flyer. Jayden's wasn't. Still, he came to the auditorium every afternoon, watching her help set up. Stage lights, painted backdrops, easels aligned like soldiers. He stayed in the shadows just behind the curtain. Ms. Elkins, the event organizer, offered him a clipboard once. "You can be crew," she said with a smile. He nodded but didn't take it. The others ignored him, or stared. No one knew what to say anymore. His silence made them nervous. On Thursday, while hauling a box of stands from the hallway, Jayden bumped into Derek. A real collision, shoulder to chest. The room froze. Derek turned, about to push back, then saw Jayden wasn't limping, wasn't flinching. He just stood there, eyes locked, calm, still. Derek laughed once, awkward, then kept walking. Jayden didn't look back. Later, Mia found him near the side doors, sitting with a sketch pad in his lap. It wasn't his. "You drew something," she said. He nodded, didn't speak. She flipped to the page. A figure standing at the edge of a cliff, storm above, fire behind, both hands outstretched. "You planning to jump?" she asked gently. Jayden shook his head. "Planning to land." They sat there in silence. Before she left, she handed him a fresh pencil. just in case you need a different kind of weapon. He held it like it might break, then tucked it into his sleeve. The auditorium smelled like dust and paint. A few students buzzed around taping wires, adjusting lights. Ms. Elkins walked in with her clipboard, voice rising to organize the chaos. Jayden didn't speak unless spoken to, but he helped, quietly, efficiently. He moved like someone who didn't need to prove he belonged, just someone who refused to leave. At one point, Ms. Elkins stopped him mid-task. "You know," she said, "you don't need permission to be seen." Jayden tilted his head. "What if I don't want to be seen?" She smiled. "Then why are you standing under a spotlight?" He didn't answer, just went back to work. Later, while taping a loose cable to the stage floor, Jayden heard whispers from the wings. A group of boys from Media Club, laughing under their breath. Something about cripple comeback tour. He kept taping, slower, straight. Every piece of tape pressed down like sealing something permanent. In the dressing room mirror, he caught his reflection for a moment, hood half off, sweat on his brow, posture straighter than it had been all year. He looked like someone who had already decided. That night at home, he stood outside Mia's apartment building. She had invited him to see her finished piece before it went up in the gallery. She opened the door with paint on her hands. "It's not done," she warned. Jayden nodded. "Neither am I." Inside, the canvas was tall, nearly as high as the ceiling. The figure on it stood under fractured glass, shards flying out like wings. No face, just the outline of someone upright. "That's you," she said. "That's everyone who ever got up when it hurt," he replied. She looked at him. "So what are you going to do?" He thought about it, then said, "Not fall." She handed him a brush. "Then don't." He didn't add to the painting, but he stood there a long time, watching it breathe in the dark room. He went home without turning on the lights. The apartment felt heavier than usual. Jayden dropped his bag, towed off his shoes, and headed straight to the garage. The punching bag hung there, still, waiting. He didn't wrap his hands, didn't put on music. He just stood in front of it, breathing. He threw one punch, then another, then a dozen. Not angry, not wild, but exact, measured. The way his brother taught him, when to strike, how to breathe, how to conserve strength for the next fight, not just the first. Sweat soaked through his shirt. His knuckles burned, but something inside him stayed cold, clear. In his head, he didn't hear laughter, didn't hear pain, just footsteps. One step forward, then another. A rhythm, a choice. Later that night, he stood in the bathroom, staring at his own reflection, eyes darker, jaw set. No crutches behind him, just a boy, upright. He whispered to himself, not a declaration, not a mantra, just a promise. If they want the fall, I'll give them the landing. Then he opened his notebook again, wrote one word at the top of the page, ready. And underneath it, no excuses, no explanations, no more warnings. The next day at school, he didn't wear a hoodie, no layers to hide behind, just a plain black t-shirt and jeans. People noticed. They always noticed when silence shifted shape. In the hallway, Ryan started to say something, then didn't. Blake looked once and turned away. Mia caught up to him at his locker. She didn't comment, just stood beside him like she belonged there. "What's next?" she finally asked. Jayden closed his locker slowly. "Whatever they think I won't do." That answer hung in the air between them. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like gravity. He walked away before the bell rang, but his footsteps were louder than the noise behind him. The following day was gray. A cold fog crawled across the pavement before first bell. Jayden walked slower than usual, not from pain, but to feel every step. Each hallway felt different now. Same lockers, same posters. But something had shifted. Teachers met his gaze longer. Some nodded. A few said his name. During advisory, one student passed him a folded note. Just one line. "We saw. We remember." He didn't open it again. He didn't need to. At lunch, he didn't head outside or to the library. He took a seat near the center of the cafeteria. Conversations dipped. Forks paused midair, then resumed. Mia slid into the seat across from him, not even looking up from her sketchbook. "You know you messed them up, right?" she said, flipping a page. Jayden smirked. I didn't even hit that hard. She looked up. You didn't have to. They ate in silence. Comfortable. Earned. That night, Jayden returned to the garage, not to train, but to rebuild. He found an old wood panel and began sanding it down. Every stroke of sandpaper across the grain felt like scraping away old versions of himself. He didn't know what he'd paint there yet, but he knew it'd be his. By midnight, his fingers were raw and dusty, but his heart felt steady. And in the quiet of the garage, for the first time, he smiled without needing a reason. That night, he didn't sleep. He stood in front of the mirror, not to fix anything, but to see if he still looked like someone who could fall. His hand brushed over the edge of the sink. Cold. Real. Then he moved to the garage, stood in the middle of the mat. No words, no movement, only breath. He didn't train. He didn't rehearse. He just existed. Somewhere inside, his brother's voice said nothing, and that was enough. Jayden opened his eyes, still standing. They laughed when I fell, he whispered. They won't laugh now. The air felt thicker that night, like the whole city was holding its breath. Jayden sat on the edge of his bed, still dressed, shoes on, back straight. His notebook lay open in front of him. The last page was blank. He didn't need it anymore. Down the hall, the television muttered background noise. Some rerun his mom half-washed while folding laundry. But even that sounded distant. He stood slowly, walked to the bathroom, washed his face, brushed his teeth, dried off with a towel that smelled like the old detergent his mother always used. Back in his room, he picked up the small envelope that had arrived earlier that day. No return address, just his name, written in rough block letters. Inside, a folded note and a flash drive. The letter was short, 5 words, all capitals. You don't need luck, Isaiah. Jayden stared at it for a long time before sliding the drive into his laptop. It was a voice memo, rough, static in the background. But it was Isaiah. I don't know what they've done to you, the voice said, but I know you. You hold more than most people can carry, and you keep walking. So keep walking. It ended there. No sign-off. No goodbye. Jayden closed the laptop, folded the letter once, slid it into his wallet. Outside his window, the streetlight flickered once, then stayed lit. Everything else was quiet. His mother knocked softly before she entered. She didn't ask if he was okay. She knew better than that by now. She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, eyes scanning him like she was trying to memorize him. You're leaving early tomorrow? He nodded. Before anyone's up. She stepped closer, placed a folded hoodie on the bed. Wear this. It's clean. He looked at the worn fabric. It used to be Isaiah's. Sleeves stretched, collar soft from age. Jayden didn't say thank you, just held it for a moment, like it meant something. She sat beside him on the bed, not facing him. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. He nodded slowly. I'm not, just proving it to myself. And if they don't see it? He shrugged. Then they were never looking. They sat in silence for a while. No tears, no speeches. Just two people tired of being strong all the time. When she stood to leave, she touched his shoulder gently. Come home standing. He nodded again. I will. After she left, Jayden stood at his window for a long time, watching the street, the empty sidewalk, the still cars. Then he stepped outside. No phone, no bag, just the hoodie and his shoes. He walked down the block, slow and steady, like testing the earth beneath him. Every step whispered, ready. At the corner, he looked up at the stars. He didn't make a wish, didn't need one. When he got back inside, he didn't return to bed. He sat in the kitchen, lights off, drinking water from a chipped glass. And when the first sliver of dawn cracked over the rooftops, he stood. Tomorrow wasn't about revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about silence. And what happened when you filled it with movement? The garage was cold before sunrise. Dust in the corners, old oil stains on the floor, everything still. Jayden didn't flip the light. He moved by memory. He wrapped his hands slowly, deliberately. Each twist of tape felt like sealing a contract. He hit the bag once, not to break it, just to remind himself what resistance felt like. Then again, and again, each punch sharper, cleaner, measured. His breath fogged in the air, heartbeat steady, movements tighter now. He remembered something Isaiah once said when they were kids. Jayden had fallen off his bike, scraped up and sobbing. Isaiah didn't yell, just knelt down, grabbed his arm and said, "You don't cry because it hurts. You cry because it scared you. Get up anyway." He hadn't remembered that moment in years, but now it felt fresh, like it lived just under the skin. Jayden punched until his arms burned, until his legs stopped wobbling, until his breath leveled into something smooth. Then he stopped, stood still, listened to the quiet. He walked to the mirror near the shelf, looked himself in the eye. No fear, no rage, just someone who knew what came next. He pulled on the hoodie, tightened the drawstrings, and whispered, like a promise between breaths, "Let's finish this." He didn't sleep right away that night, just lay on his side, eyes open, listening to the fridge buzz and the occasional car roll by. The air in the room felt heavy, like it knew something was about to shift. At 2:04 a.m., he sat up, pulled the hoodie over his head, slipped on socks, then shoes. He stepped out into the hallway, the wood creaking beneath his heel. His mom's door was cracked an inch. She never closed it fully in case he needed something. He stopped in front of it. Didn't knock, just whispered, "Thanks for not giving up on me." Then he left. Outside, the world felt blank, like a stage before the curtain rises. He walked toward the old playground 4 blocks down, where he and Isaiah used to race across mulch barefoot. It looked smaller now, but it still stood. Jayden sat on the highest point of the climbing dome, looked at the blinking radio tower in the distance, and exhaled. He imagined Isaiah beside him, not speaking, just being. A light breeze picked up, cold but not cruel. He pulled out his notebook, tore out one old page covered in angry lines, let it drift into the wind. Tomorrow, he knew, wouldn't be about fists. It wouldn't be about proving anything. It would be about arriving, about taking up space without apology. Back home, as dawn crept across the blinds, he finally slipped under the blanket and let sleep find him. When he woke, the world hadn't changed, but he had. The night before, Jayden didn't sleep. Not because of fear, not anymore. He lay in bed listening to the streetlights buzz outside and the small cracks of the house settling. Every sound felt like a countdown. Around 2 a.m., he stood and walked barefoot to the kitchen. The tiles were cold, real. He poured a glass of water, didn't drink it, just held it in both hands like an anchor. His reflection in the microwave door looked tired, but steady. He went to the garage. No lights, just moon through the dusty window. Mia stood in the doorway, hoodie up, backpack hanging from one shoulder. She didn't speak, just watched him, then nodded once, slowly. He didn't ask how long she'd been there. Didn't ask anything. Just let the silence stretch. He didn't train, just stood on the mat, closed his eyes, breathed, balanced, held it until his muscles screamed, then 1 second longer. In the corner, his crutches leaned silently. He walked past them without touching them. Back inside, he sat on the stairs. His mom was asleep. He didn't want to wake her, but he whispered anyway, "I'll be okay." No one answered, but the house felt like it heard him. Before dawn, he opened his notebook again. No quotes, no drills, just a single sentence. "If I fall, I get to choose how." He closed the book, got dressed, didn't lace his left shoe tight, wanted to feel the floor beneath him. When the sun came up, he was already standing by the front door, not waiting, just ready. It happened after sixth period, outside, just past the gym. Jayden had walked out the side door like always, head down, hands steady. The sky was pale and cold, concrete still wet from the morning drizzle, the kind of air that made people want to leave quickly. But they were waiting. Blake, Ryan, Derek. They weren't laughing this time. Phones already out, camera apps open. Blake stepped forward first. "Back again, huh?" Jayden didn't respond. Derek circled slowly. "We figured we'd give you one more shot at internet fame." Ryan moved behind him, fake casual. "You know how this goes." Jayden looked up. No fear, no flinch, just calm. "I do," he said. One line. That's all. Then it moved fast. Derek lunged first. Jayden sidestepped. One clean pivot. Knee low, stable. Blake tried to grab his shoulder. Jayden ducked, turned, drove an elbow into his ribs. Short, efficient. Blake stumbled back, coughing. Ryan froze. For the first time, uncertain. Jayden didn't chase, didn't pose. He just turned and faced them again. No words. Derek growled and charged again. Sloppier this time. Jayden shifted weight, caught him mid-move, and brought him down hard. The sound echoed. One phone hit the ground. A crack across the screen. Jayden stepped back, breathing even. Ryan ran. Blake didn't, but he didn't move either. "You done?" Jayden asked. Not loud, just clear. Blake nodded once. Eyes down. Jayden turned away, walked back toward the building, every step silent. Then just before the door closed behind him, he said it. "You didn't break me. You just taught me how to stand without fear." He knew they'd try something. The hallways had been too quiet lately, too watchful. Earlier that day, Mia had asked if he needed her to walk with him to the bus stop. "No," he said. "I don't need anyone watching this time." She hadn't argued, just handed him a folded piece of paper. "Open after." So when he stepped out into that pale light, Jayden didn't feel surprised, just ready. The walk across the pavement felt like slow motion, every footstep heavy, deliberate. He rolled his shoulders once, checked his stance, loosened his jaw. He remembered every second of every fall, every laugh, every time no one said anything, every bruise that healed just enough to get hit again. They thought he was still recovering, but the truth was, he'd already arrived. He didn't need to win. He just needed to stop running. After it ended, the silence lingered. Phones still out, but no one had posted anything yet. Jayden walked inside. No blood, no limp. Just breathe. Just sweat. In the hallway, a few students stood near the vending machine. Their eyes widened slightly. Then they looked away, like they'd seen a ghost with a spine. He didn't slow down. In the bathroom, he washed his hands, looked in the mirror, rubbed the sweat from his brow. His reflection didn't blink, didn't need to. He opened the folded paper from Mia. Inside was another drawing, 3 wolves behind bars. One stood tall, one curled up, one mid-snap. Underneath, she'd written, "Choose who you are when they open the cage." Jayden folded the paper and slid it into his back pocket. Coach Lynn saw him pass through the gym hallway later. Their eyes met briefly. Lynn didn't say anything, but he gave a single nod. At home, his mother noticed the dirt on his jeans and the tape on his wrist. Said nothing. She just placed a plate of food in front of him, sat down across the table. No questions. Jayden ate in silence, fork to plate, bite after bite. No rush. When he finished, he stood up and whispered, "It's done." His mom looked up, expression unreadable. "Not over," he added, "but done." The next morning, word had spread, but no one said anything directly. In homeroom, students glanced his way, then quickly looked back at their desks. The whispers were quieter now, not gone, just shifted. At lunch, he sat in the open. No corner, no hoodie, just a tray and the seat across from him. Empty until Mia slid into it, like always. She didn't ask how it went. She didn't have to. "You good?" she said finally. Jayden nodded. "Yeah, not great, not done. Just good." She raised her eyebrows. "Good's a start." After school, he stayed behind, went to the locker room. No reason, just habit. He sat on the bench where it all started, the first shove, the first joke. He reached down, ran a hand along the metal vent, felt the chill of memory, then stood up, shoulders square, back straight. In the mirror near the exit, he saw his face again. Same one as weeks ago, but not the same boy. He whispered to the reflection, just once, "You're still here." No smile, no celebration, just truth. Then he turned and walked out. This time no one followed him. The showcase came without fanfare. No banners, no countdown. Just a Thursday night in the school auditorium. Jayden sat backstage, hoodie sleeves pushed to his elbows. Around him voices buzzed. Students rehearsing lines, teachers checking clipboards, someone adjusting lights. He didn't rehearse, didn't need to. Mia walked up, paint still under her fingernails. "You sure?" she asked. He nodded. "No words." She smiled. "Perfect." On stage, other acts went before him. Music, spoken word, comedy bits, all loud, all reaching. When they called his name, there was a pause, some surprise. He stepped out slowly. No props, no microphone. Just a single spotlight and the sound of shoes on wood. He stood center stage, still, silent, and stayed there. No speech, no gesture, just presence. A few chuckles rose, then died out, then silence. Deep, real, weighty. He didn't fidget, didn't scan the room, just breathed. 10 seconds, 20, 30. Then he nodded once, small, barely there, and walked off. The applause didn't come instantly, but when it did, it was honest, full, quiet at first, then growing. He didn't smile, didn't bow, just stepped behind the curtain and disappeared into the dark. Backstage, after he stepped off the platform, Mia met him in the wings. Her eyes glistened, but she didn't cry. She just pressed a folded sketch into his hand. "You didn't say a thing," she whispered. "Didn't need to," he said. The sketch showed a match, not burning, not lit, just held, steady, still capable of fire. They sat behind the curtain as the final acts finished. Laughter came from the crowd, some applause, the usual buzz of ending things. Jayden didn't speak. He just watched shadows stretch across the stage floor. Later, when the lights came up and the crowd filtered out, a few students passed him near the exit. One offered a nod, another a fist bump. Nothing loud, just quiet recognition. Ms. Elkins stopped him on the way out. "That wasn't what I expected." "It wasn't for you," Jayden said evenly. She smiled anyway. "That's why it worked." Outside, the air was cool, early spring biting the wind. He and Mia walked in silence toward the sidewalk. No need to fill the space. "You were the only act who didn't explain yourself," she finally said. Jayden looked at her. "Explaining is how they soften you. I'm not soft anymore." They reached the street corner where she would turn left, and he'd go straight. "You coming to school tomorrow?" she asked. "Yeah." "Good, don't be late." He nodded, then watched her walk away under the streetlights. Jayden kept walking, past the school, past the bus stop, past the intersection that used to feel like a wall. His legs ached, but not the same way they used to. This pain belonged to movement, not survival. At home, he didn't head to his room. He stood at the kitchen counter, unwrapped the note from Mia again, and pinned it to the fridge, right next to the photo of Isaiah. He looked at them both, then turned off the light and let the dark hold him. Not like fear, like peace. The next morning, he walked into school through the front entrance. No hiding, no hoodie. His gait still had weight, but it wasn't drag, it was rhythm. In the hallway, a few people nodded. Others simply moved out of the way. No one mocked him. No one dared. Posters from the showcase were still up. Someone had scribbled respect across one in thick black marker. He didn't know who, didn't need to. During second period, the principal made a short announcement. No names, just a line. "This campus is better when we learn from each other." Jayden smirked. First time in a while. At lunch, Mia was already waiting. Same table, same quiet. But the silence had changed. He sat down, dropped his tray, then placed the sketch she gave him back on the table. Flattened, unfolded, visible. They didn't talk about the stage, or the fight, or the past. They talked about her next project, about spring break, about maybe going somewhere with Hills. After school, he went to the gym, not to train, just to stand under the hoop for a while. Ball in hand, breath steady. He didn't shoot, just looked up. For the first time, the basket didn't feel like a reminder of what he'd lost. It felt like something he could choose to approach, or not. He left the gym empty-handed, on purpose. That night before bed, he stood at the window. Same street, same glow from the lamppost. But inside him, everything was different. He wasn't waiting anymore. Not for them to change, not for justice, not for revenge. He had stood on stage with nothing. And somehow that had been everything. As he turned from the window, his phone buzzed once. No message. Just a memory. An old video file he'd forgotten about. Him and Isaiah in the backyard years ago. Sparring, laughing, falling. Jayden watched it without sound. Just the flicker of movement, the bounce of fists, the grin on his brother's face. He didn't cry, didn't rewind. He just watched it once. Then closed the screen. Before getting into bed, he reached for his notebook. Most of the pages were filled, scars on paper. He turned to the last blank page, wrote one final sentence, no more proof, just presence. He closed it, placed it on the nightstand, and turned out the light. The next day was quiet, not awkward, not tense, just quiet. Jayden walked the hallways without eyes following him the same way, not out of fear, out of recognition. He passed by the vending machines where the flyers had once been taped. Nothing there now, just bare walls and gum stuck to metal. In second period, Mr. Burnett handed back essays. Jayden's had a short note in the corner. Better. You're letting us see you. He didn't smile, but he read the comment twice. In gym, Coach Lynn didn't say a word, just nodded toward the bag. Jayden didn't hit it. He stood in front of it, hands raised, knees slightly bent, and held the stance. For a full minute, then another. He timed his breath, controlled his posture, balanced. Later that day, Mia caught up to him behind the library. They're still talking, she said. Let them. Some of them think you're dangerous now. Jayden shrugged. People fear what won't flinch. They sat in the grass. No sketchbooks, no notebooks. Just sky and time. That evening, his mom asked if he wanted to go with her to the pharmacy. It was a normal thing, routine, but he said yes. They walked side by side, not talking much. She asked how school was. He said it was fine. She nodded and for once didn't follow with another question. Just let it rest. Outside the pharmacy, she pulled him to a stop and looked him in the eye. You know you don't owe anyone anything, right? Jayden looked at her, surprised. What if I still want to give it? She smiled, a little sad. Then make sure it's yours to give. They walked the rest of the way home slower than usual. At night, Jayden pulled open his drawer and took out an old basketball. Dusty, half deflated. He bounced it once on his floor. The sound was softer than it used to be. He didn't try to shoot, didn't pretend to train. He just sat cross-legged with the ball in his lap. Let it rest. Let himself rest. And somewhere in the silence, he realized he hadn't changed. He just remembered who he was before they tried to shrink him. The next day, Jayden passed by room 214, the first classroom he'd ever entered in this school. He hesitated, then pushed the door open. The teacher, Mrs. Hampton, looked up from her desk and smiled, surprised. Mr. Hall, I figured you graduated early with the way rumors fly. Jayden smiled lightly, just passing through. Near the back of the room, a new student sat alone. Black hoodie, hunched shoulders, face half buried in a notebook. Jayden recognized the posture, not the kid, but the energy. As he turned to leave, Ms. Hampton called out, Anything you'd like to say to the class? Jayden paused, thought about it, then turned back to the room. No speech, no drama. You don't have to fight, he said. You just have to stay. A few students exchanged glances. A few nodded. Jayden nodded once more to the teacher, then stepped back into the hallway. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about leaving a mark without carving it into someone else. That evening, he wrote nothing, drew nothing. He just went to bed early. And when he closed his eyes, the world didn't feel heavy, just quiet. It started again. Not to him, to someone else. Jayden noticed the kid on Monday. Crutches, new, smaller than him, maybe 15. He walked the halls like Jayden used to. Measured steps, eyes down, shoulders high with defense. The jokes came quick, nothing original, just noise. Jayden watched from his locker. No anger, no surprise. At lunch, he saw them laugh behind the new kid's back. Tray nearly knocked out of his hand. One of the older students mimicked his walk. Jayden stood, quiet, no words, walked over, didn't say anything. Just sat down next to him. The table went silent. The new kid looked up, hesitant, nervous. Then, confused, Jayden handed him a napkin, then went back to his own tray. Nothing more. The tension melted without a fight, like heat draining from a wire. When Jayden left the cafeteria, a few others followed him with their eyes. He didn't look back. In the hallway, Mia caught up with him. "So you're mentoring now," she teased. "Didn't say anything." "Exactly. That's the best part." They walked together past the gym, past the front office, past the place where his own breaking point happened. Jayden stopped once, just to look. No emotion, just presence. "It doesn't echo anymore," he said. Mia nodded. "Because you outgrew it." He didn't smile, but his chest lifted a little. That evening, he walked home alone. No music, no phone, just dusk. At a crosswalk, he saw his reflection in a storefront window. He looked taller, not physically, just rooted. He whispered, not for anyone but himself, "I'm still here." And for once, that felt like more than enough. Later that week, Jayden caught the new kid in the stairwell alone. He was struggling with the top step, trying to balance his tray and bag at the same time. Jayden didn't offer help, just walked over, took the bag, held it until the boy reached the next level, then handed it back. "Thanks," the boy mumbled, a little embarrassed. Jayden nodded. "You'll figure it out." The kid hesitated. "They mess with everybody?" Jayden tilted his head. "Only if they think you'll break loud." He didn't explain further, just walked away. Later that day in English class, Mr. Burnett called him up after the bell. "You've changed," the teacher said. Jayden waited. "Not just stronger. You're still." Jayden nodded. "Took a lot of motion to get still." Burnett chuckled. "If you ever want to help in peer sessions next semester, let me know." "I'll think about it." That night, Isaiah called over video. First time in weeks. Jayden picked up, expecting noise, jokes, maybe questions. Instead, his brother just said, "I saw the clip." Jayden braced himself, but Isaiah didn't tease. "You stood like someone who didn't need to fight. That's when people listen." Jayden exhaled. "Didn't feel like winning." It wasn't. It was changing. They didn't talk much more. Didn't need to. Before bed, Jayden walked back to the same crosswalk where he used to freeze up. Cars passed. Lights changed. This time he didn't rush. He just stepped forward when it was time. And when he reached the other side, he paused, not for fear, for memory. He turned around once, looked back at the street, then kept walking forward without looking again. In art class the next day, Jayden stopped by Mia's easel. She had started something new. A canvas of silhouettes, all walking in different directions. No faces, just posture and motion. "That me?" he asked. She shrugged. "Could be. Could be everyone." He stared at the figure near the center, upright, one hand open. "You ever going to sign your work?" he asked. She looked over the canvas. "When I know who it's for?" Jayden didn't answer, but before he walked away, he pointed to the open hand. "Make it holding something." "What?" "Doesn't matter. Just let them know it's not empty." That afternoon, the school counselor caught up to him between periods. "A few students mentioned you've been helping, without being asked." Jayden raised an eyebrow. "I'm not fixing anyone. You're showing them they're not alone. That counts." She handed him a pamphlet for a peer support group. Jayden folded it, didn't say yes, but he didn't throw it out. At home that night, he pulled it from his backpack, set it next to his notebook, and for once, the silence in the room didn't feel heavy. It felt like space, room to breathe. The spring showcase didn't feel like a big deal, but it was. Jayden walked into the auditorium without nerves, without costume, without armor. He didn't bring anything, didn't need to. Mia met him near the entrance. She had paint under her nails again. "You're sure?" she asked. He nodded. "I'm not performing. I'm just being." She smiled. "Exactly." Inside, the crowd was a mix of students, parents, and the occasional administrator. A quiet buzz filled the space, like the room hadn't figured out what kind of night it would be. Jayden took a seat in the second row. Not backstage, not hidden. When it was Mia's turn, she stepped onto the stage and pulled the cover off a tall canvas at center. Gasps, silence. And then something deeper. The painting was simple, stark. One figure centered. No face, just outline. Upright, alone, still. Behind the figure, chaos. Color, fire. Words scratched into paint, but none of it touched the figure. Mia stepped aside. Let the image speak. Jayden didn't look at anyone, just at the canvas. Then he stood, walked up the steps, slow, steady. The crowd shifted, murmured, unsure. He didn't touch the mic, didn't speak. He just stood beside the painting. One breath, two, stillness, then nodded once and walked off. In the back row, his mother wiped a tear. His phone buzzed in his pocket. A photo from Isaiah, watching the live stream. One word, proud. Outside, the evening felt cool and clear. Jayden stood by the front steps while people poured out. Some nodded, some smiled. No one spoke too loud. Mia joined him, hands in pockets. You think they get it? She asked. Jayden looked up at the stars. Doesn't matter, he said. I do. Backstage, after he stepped down, no one swarmed him. Ms. Elkins just touched his shoulder briefly. Sometimes the quietest ones shake the room. He nodded. No words. Mia handed him a bottle of water and leaned back against the wall. That kid in the back row? She said. The one on crutches? Jayden turned. The new kid was still sitting alone, eyes locked on the painting. He didn't blink the whole time, she added. Jayden took a step toward the aisle, but didn't go far. He didn't need to say anything. The boy stood up, slowly, and walked over. They just stood there for a second. No introductions, no speeches. Then the kid stuck out his hand, not as a fan, as a future. Jayden took it. Outside, the night had turned cooler. The breeze carried voices, laughter, car doors slamming. Jayden waited near the curb. His mother walked up beside him, carrying her coat folded over her arm. She didn't say much, just bumped his shoulder lightly with hers. You didn't flinch up there, she said. Didn't have to. They walked together in silence through the parking lot. No rush. When they reached the corner, Jayden stopped. You tired? She asked. He shook his head. Number just done. She looked at him for a long second. I like who you've become. Jayden didn't reply, but he reached for her coat, took it from her arm, and held it as they walked. At home, he opened his notebook one last time. Most of the pages were marked, crossed, scarred with ink and sweat. He turned to the back cover, scribbled a single sentence in thick black pen. Some people win by standing loud. I won by standing still. He closed it, placed it on the shelf, and let it stay there.